David Moyes has caused a little bit of a stir on social media today, hasn't he? He did his press conference yesterday ahead of the Perth friendly tomorrow in Australia, which we will be covering here on Hammers Chat. So pop back 10:30 in the morning, pop back. I'll remind you about it at the end of the video. But when he did his press conference, he was naturally asked about Declan Rice, as he's expected to join Arsenal today. So he spoke about that, but while speaking about Declan, within there, he said that there's no plans, that we don't have any plans, and we can't make any plans until Declan actually joins Arsenal. Now, I might be a little bit naive, and maybe I'm being way too calm for this situation, but I don't believe that for a second. But also, the thing is, people are reacting to quotes, and it's a bit of what David Moyes says, but it's also in text format. And I think in text format, the one thing that's missing, which is really, really important, is tone. It's been taken out of context and there's no tone. So what you're reading is you're reading a quote which essentially says, until it's done, we can't plan anything really. That's it. That sounds bad. That does not sound good whatsoever. But when you watch him, and not even listen, when you watch David Moyes, when he's speaking about the Declan Rice thing, he's got a smile on his face. He's having a bit of a laugh. He's having a little bit of a joke. And do you know something? He's having a little bit of a dig at the journalists as well. Because when he got asked about Declan Rice joining Arsenal, he said, I've just been listening to Sky and taking the news from Sky. You seem to know more about it than me and getting the news quicker than I'm getting. So he's basically just joking as if you're not getting any information. I mean, David Moyes knows exactly what's going on. He then went on to say, until it's done, we can't plan anything really. We will have to wait and see what happens. Now, I don't believe that whatsoever. I don't believe it at all. There's a big difference between planning and buying someone. Can we buy anyone until Declan Rice has officially joined Arsenal? No, we can't. We know we're relying on the Declan Rice money. We know that. It's not been a secret. It's been out there in the open for months now, really, that our business is heavily reliant on selling Declan Rice. There's a reason David Sullivan went on the largest radio broadcasting show in the country the day after we won the Conference League, because he needed to sell Declan Rice. He wanted to sell Declan Rice. There's a gentleman's agreement, of course, but Sullivan did what he thought was best in order to ramp up interest and therefore drive up price in Declan. I don't like it, but I get why he did it. I don't like the fact we're relying on selling Declan Rice, but at the same time, I get it as well. We've just spent 190 million or something in the last 12 months. We've bought players like Sebastian Haller and Felipe Anderson and practically had to give them away. The losses that we've incurred over the years, it's coming back to haunt us now a little bit. And so we're relying on the Declan Rice money. We know that. But for Moyes to suggest that there's no plans, that there is no plans to replace Declan, it's just rubbish. He's having a joke. And Moyes has always joked in the media. He's lied in the media plenty of times. The best one was, I'm sure it was Lucas Fabianski last season. The club put up photos from training. Lucas Fabianski's there. David Moyes went into his press conference a couple of hours later and said, Fabianski's injured. He's not been in training all week. We'd literally just seen him in training. The club then removed the training ground footage, but it was already out there. We knew, West Ham fans knew Fabianski was playing at the weekend. We'd already seen him, but Moyes was still trying to keep players' cards close to his chest. He does it on plenty of occasions. So when Moyes gives you injury updates, he's usually tricking. He's usually trying to keep it quiet. And you know something? I like it. I think that's exactly what you should do. Keep the opposition manager guessing. So when it comes to transfer targets and that, he's not just going to start naming names that or anything like that. He knows if he says, I've got 1 or 2 targets, the next question will be, well, who are they? So he's shutting down the talk of Declan Rice immediately. So much so, he goes on to just confirm there's plans. In the exact same answer, he went on to confirm that there's players that West Ham are looking at, because he said, I don't think we can replace Declan exactly like for like, but we will have to add to the squad as times go on. We won't give you any names or what we're going to do. So for him to say that last part would suggest that he has got a list of names. He knows exactly what they're going to do. I'd imagine Moyes is out there in Australia, focusing on training, focusing on getting ready for the friendlies against Perth and then Spurs on Tuesday. And he's leaving the transfer business to Tim Steidten back in London. And that's the way it should be. Steidten, Sullivan, they should be the ones cracking on with the transfer dealings, while David Moyes is dealing with the playing staff out in Australia. And I'm very, very laid back about this. I don't believe for a second that a manager with the experience of David Moyes with how much notice we've had, which is years, that Declan Rice will be leaving West Ham. We've got no plans. Not a chance. Those plans might have altered since Tim Steidten arrived. Those plans might have changed. More names have probably been given to the list. Possibly. That might have happened. But to have none, don't believe it. Now, while I'm confident, Moyes / Steidten, West Ham in general, while I'm confident the club have got a form of plan as to how to replace Declan Rice, what I'm not confident in is them getting it right, for example. I'm confident we will spend money. I'm confident we will replace Declan Rice. Am I confident that the players we buy will be the right replacements? No, I am not. I am hopeful. I'm excited to see what we can do. But being confident that the club have got some form of plan and Moyes is just tricking in the media is completely different to being confident that the club are going to spend loads of money and bring in the players we all hope to see in a West Ham United shirt. But anyway, with all that said and done, today David Ornstein's basically a small confession. David Ornstein is my favourite football journalist in the know. The guy that puts the news out there. Ornstein's my favourite one. Percy's second. Fabrizio Romano's up there as well, but Ornstein is like top tier on his own for me at the minute. So when he says something, I tend to believe it, whether it's about West Ham or a other club. He was all over the Declan Rice transfer stuff. Everything that's happened regarding Declan Rice, whenever Ornstein said this is the situation, it feels like it's turned out to be true. We will never know exactly what Manchester City's bid was. But you get the impression it was true because every other journalist then copied him. So anyway, David Ornstein, he's the most trustworthy guy for general football news in my opinion. He today has said that West Ham will be making a bid for Edson Alvarez, the Ajax defensive midfielder. Ajax want 35-40 million. West Ham have yet to make a bid, but it's expected. We are expected to go in for him. Now that's a name that's been around for quite a while actually. We were linked to him. I remember being linked to him back in January. I do, because I remember doing a video specifically about us being linked to Edson Alvarez, because Chelsea were linked to him last summer, and Ajax's asking price was 60 million. I remember in January saying, I'm not sure we could get him. It would feel like a bit of an optimistic one, that transfer target, but somebody that I wouldn't mind seeing come in to replace Declan Rice in the summer. It feels more realistic now. Obviously, Dortmund had pretty much a deal agreed with Ajax, and they pulled out at last minute for various reasons. They wanted to go with Emre Can as defensive midfielder essentially, and they don't feel that Alvarez is perhaps enough bang for their buck, which I get. I think it is pricey. I think 35-40 million is quite chunky for him, but I think he's a really good defensive midfielder. I think he replaces Declan Rice's defensive aspect of the game. The sort of in possession side of things, not so much. We're not going to see those runs that Declan Rice used to do. That's not going to come from Alvarez. But this is what, like I said, the general consensus I feel among a lot of West Ham fans is that we need two players to replace Declan Rice. And that comment from David Moyes actually gives me a little bit of hope, which says, I don't think we can replace Declan exactly like for like. So that would suggest that they are targeting two players perhaps. And Alvarez certainly would cover the defensive side of it. But this then raises the next question, which is, well, we have a Thomas Souček-shaped issue here then, don't we? Because in order to bring in a second midfielder to play alongside Alvarez and alongside Paqueta, that would mean Thomas Souček comes out the team. Now, while I trust David Moyes has a form of plan or a form of transfer targets for replacing Declan Rice, what I can't do is trust that David Moyes has a plan to replace Thomas Souček from his starting 11. I'm yet to see enough evidence. He has been dropped on a couple of occasions last season, Souček, but the way we ended the season, that three were undroppable. Rice, Souček, Paqueta, that was 100% Moyes' first choice three. So I guess the question I'm asking myself is, will Moyes rip it up entirely and go again? And he tried that last season. He claims he tried that last season. His own words, Moyes' own words, was we have to break up West Ham. We have to start again, essentially. Transition. All those words, those buzzwords that we got. And I never really felt that Souček was out the team for a prolonged period of time in order to try it. But it would suggest that Moyes is maybe open to doing something. Like I said last week when we spoke about Scamacca, I feel Moyes was happy to drop Antonio for Scamacca. Scamacca started plenty of games prior to his injury, and it was enough for me to say, yeah, Antonio's no longer undroppable like he used to. Danny Ings started a couple of games ahead of Antonio as well. Bowen and Souček are probably the last two remaining I'm looking at, thinking I'm not sure Moyes will ever drop them. Now I would include Zuma in there and Agard in there as well, but I do think they justify their inclusions through their performances. And Bowen used to, but last season I think there was a case that Bowen should have been dropped and he wasn't. Just like same for Souček. So Alvarez I would be happy at. 35 million, 40 million feels like a fair fee. Really good defensive midfielder. And I would like that transfer for numerous reasons. I'll cover it when we do the transfer rumour show. Maybe Sunday we'll do a transfer roundup because of the friendly tomorrow. But one of the reasons would be that I think he'd work well under David Moyes, or how I think Moyes will want West Ham to play next season. I think he will work well under that. Different to how Ajax play, of course, but I think what Alvarez's strengths are will suit David Moyes. But what his weaknesses are, and while I speak about further down the line in transfer window, we're going to have to start looking at that homegrown quota and be forced into buying players that tick that box. In centre midfield, if we do go for Alvarez and make him the defensive midfielder, I think the next centre midfielder, he's got to be that ball carrier. He's got to be better in possession. He's got to have that progressive passing ability that we are lacking from Alvarez, but also from Thomas Souček as well. We cannot have Alvarez and Souček. I think the midfield would be slow. I think Paqueta would be starved of service, even though he's only 20 yards away. I think he would struggle to get on the ball. I wouldn't particularly like to see that midfield trio. I see us linked to James Ward-Prowse again. 25 million is what is rumoured to be our opening bid. I'm still not sold on it. I think 25 million is a fair price. I think if we were to have a different midfield setup, I'd be okay with it, but we don't. And hypothetically, if we signed Alvarez, Ward-Prowse next to him, I'm not sure he's good enough in possession, in open play. Now, I'm not doubting him as a player, I'm not doubting him as a captain, as a set-piece taker. He's got his strengths, but one of his strengths is not how good he is in possession in the middle of the pitch, breaking the lines. That's why Romeo Lavia is getting so much plaudits, because he could do that. Ward-Prowse, not so sure about. And I just think midfield three, while I'm not convinced by Alvarez, Souček and Paqueta, I'm not that convinced by Alvarez, Ward-Prowse and Paqueta either. It'd be an improvement, but for 25 million I think there's better players out there that could fulfil that role. So we'll have to wait and see. But Alvarez would be a massive yes for me, but this whole rumour completely contradicts what David Moyes has just said. But like I said at the start, I don't believe what David Moyes has said. When Moyes says he's got no plans, I don't believe it whatsoever. I think he's waiting for the sale to go through so we can start putting in formal bids and start inquiring our own players. But I'd imagine at this point West Ham are simply doing the inquiry stage of things, whether it's Zakaria, Ward-Prowse, Alvarez, whatever. I'd imagine we're in contact with numerous clubs, numerous agents, numerous footballers, and trying to find out who wants to come to West Ham, who's available, how much for. Then once we've got that information, we can then work out which ones we're formally going to go after. That's what I expect us to be doing at this point. And I feel quite confident that's what we will be doing. Now, tomorrow, West Ham take on Perth over in Australia, 11 AM kickoff UK time. So we will be live at 10:30 UK time on this channel. We'll do a half-hour build-up show as always. Charlie will be doing the watch-along, and then we will be doing a review immediately after the watch-along as well. So it's sort of like normal service resumes to a lesser extent. Half an hour build-up instead of an hour. But we'll be live from 10:30. So if you're kicking about tomorrow morning, please do come back here at 10:30. Join us for the build-up. But yeah, there you go. I think David Moyes is having a little bit of fun out in Australia and winding people up. By the way, what I will just clarify, I don't think he's trying to wind up West Ham fans. I don't think his intention is to make West Ham fans frustrated that he's claiming there's no plan. I think this is purely aimed at Sky Sports / the journalists. I think Moyes is trying to wind them up a little bit. Because like I said, he said, you guys know more than I do. I'm getting my news from you. You said it was done 2 weeks ago and it's still not done. I think it's just jibes at journalists. Something we've seen Moyes do plenty times over the years. But what else have we seen Moyes do plenty times over the years? Keep his cards close to his chest. I think that's just what he's doing for this one. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this rambling, please do drop a like on, subscribe to Hammer's Chat, and I'll catch you tomorrow at 10:30 AM. See you in a bit.